there's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of different things that are just complete bullshit, which is the reason I started long range tactics, and it's probably one of the reasons why maybe you started is to try and get to the answers yourself without going
Mm-hmm.
to Reddit or one of the places to find some of the BS answers. Because I still get people that call me at Straight Jacket, and I'm like, "Where did you hear this information?" "Oh, I got it off of a subreddit and Reddit," and I'm like, "Oh my hell, stay
I
off of
hate
Reddit."
Reddit.
Stay off freaking Reddit, please. Like, there's good information, but you got to know who to get the
Mm-hmm.
information from, right? Where
Yeah.
where do where do you get a lot of your information? Like, if you're going out looking, you just googling it or what?
I'll always Google some things and then just verify with my other trusted sources. Like, I go to Brian for most everything if it hack Brian Morgan.
Mm,
So basically everything that he's taught me or told me, I take as gospel because nothing that he ever tells me is like just regurgitated information that he got from some unanimous source. It's experience. He's telling me like, like, yeah, I read this, but then when I applied it on the mountain, I got this result. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take the result that you got and that experience rather than, whatever source was saying on the internet. And there could be some truth to it, but I like the hard data that's been earned rather than learned.
well, and a lot of that, we see people, they go out and they try something once, and they're like, "Oh, this is what happened." But you
Mm-hmm.
know, in ballistics and anything else, like you try 4 or 5 times, and then you take the average out of those 4 or 5 times to get what it really is. And you
Yeah.
see a lot of things from bigger names in the industry. I'm not going to say who, but you're like, okay, how often did you test that? You did one group with one barrel, and that's how it goes. So did you shoot Bart lines? Did you shoot benchmarks? What did you shoot? Who chambered it?
Mm-hmm.
Who did all this? Like, there's too many variables out there for this to be it. Now, you can take some of that information and apply it, but it doesn't mean that all that information's right. Oh, this
Yeah.
has to be your powder, this has to be your bullet. No, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
depending on who cut that barrel, there's so many different variations to everything. And I think you've got to take little grains of salt from everything, I guess, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what
Yeah.
you're saying, Brian. Brian's been around forever, though.
Yeah. He's shot more than probably anyone I know.
Yeah, and
That's
now
just,
they. Yeah,
competition and now what he does for work up at Hat Creek.
yeah,
So,
because I met Brian when he was down at Core.
hmm
Back when it was Core before it was Altus, and he was one of the owners of that. And then for some reason he left sunny Florida for northern Idaho. We'll never know why, but
hmm
he's running a hell of an operation up there. I noticed that he started to open it a little bit to like outside LE departments. He opened up
hmm
a section to like some civilians, and that sold out in like an hour. Like,
yeah,
you know,
his Civ classes always sell out way fast.
well, when you know what you're talking about, it's crazy to me though, because I mean, I guess we can kind of hit on this a little bit. There's been so many training companies come out, and I see them go away as soon as they come in because it's hard to fill a
hmm
lot of those classes.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of them just get on the forums, and it's a measuring contest. I'm better than you, and
hmm
I got this, so I'm better than you type thing. And man, it gets there's some real blurry stuff going on there, but I keep
hmm
seeing a lot of those guys disappear. They're
Yeah.
not like people understand, like, you've got the guys from Oklahoma that teach classes, you've got, Vibert and those guys were teaching classes, but it's just like anything, making content, doing anything, it takes a lot of time to be good at
hmm
and to teach
Yeah.
classes, and to put out that kind of stuff, just like you creating content now. And after a
hmm
while, it gets overwhelming, like just doing
Yeah,
it, not trying to do it.
it's a lot. Yeah, like I could go and teach a surface level class and yeah, people would get information that they could use and regurgitate, but at a certain point where the experience takes over, and that's where Brian really shines, is he just has so much experience to pull from, and he's a good teacher. Like that's something that I feel like I lack. I feel like I'm pretty confident in my shooting ability, but it's hard for me to convey why I'm confident in that ability. So like long range is super complicated, but it's also super simple at the same time.
Right.
There's just a few different variables that you just need to have nailed down, and you just need to be able to understand those variables on a lot, you know, deeper scale. And I think that's where the experience comes in. You can know the
Well,
variables, but understanding them is where it makes a difference.
when I started shooting, we didn't have kestrels. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
have weather meters. We didn't have any of that. One of the first ones that came out that just blew our mind was that little ballistic wind meter that kind of paired to
Oh, the
your phone.
sonic wind meter, whatever it is,
Yeah, well, it was. I,
ultrasonic or something.
no, I can't remember what the heck it was called. It was before that. I've been shooting for a long time, but we would get our DAs from weather stations. You'd say pull
Mm-hmm.
from weather station, but you didn't know where the weather station was. It could be 30 miles away, and who knows what your DA was. So we
Yeah.
played with that for a long time, and now garbage in, garbage out. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The Kestrels are smart. You
Mm-hmm.
put right there, as long as you're putting in the right variables, your scope height, your twist rate, your correct velocity, and you're not just taking. We could go down this rabbit hole. You shoot 5 shots and you take the average and put it in your thing. No, shoot 30, 40 shots, get your average, put that in there type thing. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, like I said, garbage in, garbage out. So if you're putting garbage information into that Kestrel and then expecting to have a high hit probability, good freaking luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's and then you enter wind. Emil Praslick, he was one of the first ones on the podcast. Do you know who Emil is?
Yeah.
So we had him on the podcast, and we need to have him back on. I just like talking to Emil, but understanding wind is probably the biggest variable in any of it. It's just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
That's a as more the more I've kind of understood it and shot in the wind, the I know my performance in every aspect of my shooting has gone way up because if you get good data in your Kestrel, like you get a good consistent velocity, your ammo's got a good SD, and then you get shoot more than 10 shots over your chrono, put that in, then you either true it, use a custom curve, or true your BC, however you want to do it. All of them are pretty solid in getting good data. You can have all that, but if you don't know wind, like you're gonna miss everything.
Right. Yeah, that's and a lot of people don't true and they don't understand that. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
there's DCs, yes, there's stuff out there, but you still got to go out 500 or whatever you want to shoot to and true that. And I think we need to
Yeah.
have probably a podcast and explain like how to true everything
Mm-hmm.
back through because that is a big thing. But it still boggles my mind. Like, I got a call from a customer the other day and he's like, my gun's just not shooting. And it's like, okay, so we've had that, of course no one's perfect, but
Mm-hmm.
so what we did is we built this sheet at work of go down this sheet with a customer and it'll tell us one of two things. Is it the barrel or is it the customer's knowledge when they're interacting with that barrel? So,
Yeah.
it starts with, okay, when did you clean it? How did you break it in? What bullet are you shooting? What ammunition is shooting? What's your muzzle velocity? What's your SDs? And it is amazing to me that so many people have no idea. And it
Mm-hmm.
still boggles me that people still pull freaking information off of a box of ammo.
Yeah.
Take that shit off. That has to be put there, but that does not mean that is what your freaking barrel is doing. you know
Mm-hmm.
and, and these customers, bless them, it's like, man, I just want to sit down and teach you, but I don't have all day, so let's kind of go through this and I'll give you some things to work on. And most of them come back with, oh yeah, you're right, my SDs were like, I think the one he was shooting, I don't know where he even got this ammo, his SDs were like 40 something, and it was shooting like a 2-inch group, and it's like, so he changed bullets and changed the load, and imagine that went down to like a sub half MOA gun, and
Yeah. Crazy.
it just boggles my mind with the amount of information out there. But here's the thing: is I think a lot of it goes over people's head because there is so much information, but you've got to
Mm-hmm.
understand what information that you as a shooter need to look for. You can go
Yeah.
down rabbit holes. There's people like Sawyer that go down rabbit holes. I know because I've seen you go down rabbit holes.
Mm.
And there's other people that are just like, okay, I just want to be accurate and I don't care about anything else. So there's
Mhm.
definitely different things that you can be. How can you be proficient? Or, if it's your passion and it's what you want to go down, it's where you go down. But
Yeah.
as a ballistician, I was a ballistician for 6 or 7 years, man. I saw it all. And I to this day I still can't explain all the stuff that we saw testing
Mhm.
things, but we
Yeah.
need to have more podcasts breaking the basics down, I think, because
Yeah.
everybody wants at the end of the day, everybody wants an accurate rifle and they just want to go out there and
Mhm.
shoot. They don't want to
Yeah.
spend hours and hours and hours in reloading the room, and they don't want to go try and watch every YouTube video out there, and they don't want to. So here is the basics of how you get proficient and how you go down the path. And I think we probably need to do
Mhm.
some of those episodes.
No, that'd be super useful.
Yeah, because you probably get a lot of just basic questions, right?
Mhm. Like 20 or 30 a day.
Like what is your most like? What's one of your biggest questions?
The biggest question is just best budget rifle, and
Mm,
I usually just say Tika. Like you can't go wrong with the Tika. Like
yeah.
it's a great action. Their factory barrels will shoot half minute all day long with good factory ammo, and
Hmm.
then after that you can pick how much you want to spend on an optic. And then I guess the second most asked question would be a lot of people want to get into reloading, and I guess the question would be is getting into reloading worth it with match ammo getting better? And it's pretty subjective. So I'm like, well, how much do you have to spend on that? And I say like, what's your rifle setup? I like to be a little bit more, you know, I don't know how to explain. I just want to get their variables first. When people ask questions like this, because I love long range, and I was that kid when I was like 11 that bought just shitty equipment, and I got really bad results, and it bummed me out. I was super depressed when I first went out and tried shooting. I was, what's
Hmm.
going on? So when people ask me these questions getting into it, I dive more into it with them than they are expecting. They think I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, get an RCBS or get this cheap one. I'll say, no, what kind of rifle you're working with, what's your budget, and I'll dive into it with them because it's a little bit more, to me, it's more subjective to them. Like, what's your level of commitment, I guess, in getting
Right.
into precision rifles? Because there you can get really far with good factory ammo.
Oh yeah, one hundred
But then
percent.
if you want to take it a little bit step further, if you want to be a little bit more customized and get your SDs lower, then then you jump into the levels of reloading equipment. You can get. I just got a rock chucker and it's great. You can get pretty refined stuff out of it. But then there's people that want to get like the zero press or the short action precision press, and they get all the different powder chuckers and just a bunch of crazy equipment, which you can get some crazy results, but I don't think it's 100% like needed when you're getting into reloading.
I don't think a lot of that's needed at all. Some people just
Hmm.
want to say that they have, and I'm not bashing on anybody's products, but in Barnes in our ballistics lab, we had some of the most accurate loads that I've ever seen, and they were just done on rock chuckers. It's
Yeah.
at the end of the day, as long as everything's straight and you get your load right. I mean, it's to say you've got one of those other presses. I think it's like, oh yeah, I've got that. But are you going to
Hmm.
go from shooting half minute to quarter minute groups with that? Maybe. I doubt it. I doubt it.
Yeah.
It might. You're just taking, I guess maybe peace of mind. I don't know. But
Hmm.
you put up some of these, like I was this kind of the same way when I started. I didn't have the money, so I just bought the Lee reloading set, which is probably what you did, right?
Hmm.
And you used the shitty dies, but you got okay results. But yeah, you're right. I mean, factory ammo today is not where it was even a few years ago. It's gone crazy.
Yeah. I
But yeah,
think a lot of people, what I say to a lot of people is most of the people that are, splitting hairs like that can't shoot that difference. Like they want to have, a one hole load, but they're not a one hole shooter.
no.
So, and those are the kind of people that are absolutely gonna they'll take to their grave that it was their equipment. So like you can get a factory Tika, not even put it in a nice chassis, a okay scope, and then do a solid load. And if you're a good shooter, you can stack them on top of each other.
Hmm.
So
But you still got to take action at the end of the day. They're
yeah.
good actions, but
Hmm.
once you run a custom or you run a, one of these others, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I see it. And once they
Yeah.
get dirty, you definitely really see they really shine.
Hmm.
But for a factory hunting rifle or anything like that, heck yes. The Seekins,
Yeah.
they've come a long ways.
Hmm.
There's some great options out there that no one had the options. They had the Christensens and whatever, but I think everybody's kind of seeing where that brand has gone, which is sad. But you know, I try not to speak ill of anybody, but when a brand listens to the wrong people and does the wrong things, that's what you expect happens, right?
Yeah. Wrong things happen.
Yeah. So we kind of were going to do this. I know you shot the NRL Hornady Hunter here in Utah,
Hmm.
Price, Utah, and we were kind of going to do an after action on it. You know, what happened, kind of give us a breakdown with it. Because I think the NRL Hunter is a great option for a lot of people. But I've heard
Hmm.
lately, and you need to help me with this because I don't shoot them, but I've heard lately that it's kind of turning more into a hunter PRS type thing because the target sizes are super small and like I don't know. It's just what I hear, but I'd like to have an after action of this and kind of where you think the match was as a whole and how
Hmm.
it was set up and everything. But go ahead, let us know. Let us know what you did. How it was.
So I guess to answer that question to start off, I think that really comes down to the MD and how they want to put it together. Because I've only shot four of these to start out, so I'm not terribly experienced. But I have seen the difference, and I can see definitely, I can absolutely see why people would think that some of them are, kind of turning into PRS hunter matches because of target size. Because we went up to Oregon, we shot the Blue Mountain hunter up there, and that MD, his name's Nate Savage.
Mm,
He was very against that. He did not want it to be a PRS hunter. All of his targets were animal silhouettes. There was not a single shape in that match, which I thought was really cool.
mm,
And he kept the distances to like normal hunting distances. The farthest shot was like 940, and it was on a larger elk target. It wasn't a full size elk target, but
mm,
it was a realistic situation. Big magnum shooting an elk at that distance. That's fairly common.
mm, mm.
But he made it, and there was no like PRS style props. Like you could use your tripod a lot, which is encouraged. I think a good ethical hunter should employ a nice tripod that can get you a much stabler position in basically any situation. So
Oh,
I
don't
like
stir
that.
that pot. Don't stir that pot. Here we go.
But no, and then the price match, we've shot this one twice now. This was the first hunter match I shot last year, this time last year, and then we shot it again this year. And there wasn't as many animal silhouette targets, and this would be the one that, yeah, I could think people would say this was a PRS style match just because of the target size. I didn't
Mm,
think there were any like particularly, well, obviously there were the target shapes, I should say, but for like a size to distance ratio, I didn't think that like it was like nut crusher kind of targets. Every
mm,
target was very doable. Like I think even with pretty mild winds, I think we only got into like maybe a 12-mile-an-hour wind at one point. I almost never came off plate for wind holds.
oh, that's
So
nice.
they were good sized targets, but it was still really challenging with finding some of those targets. So like a new shooter, there's a ton of skills shooters and they all really enjoyed it. And as far as like the positional stuff, there was nothing that was really like PRS, like barricade style. It was all natural terrain, which was super cool. But as far as matches go, the hunter style matches are my favorite. I think when it comes to shooting, the stuff that I lean towards is just the practical performance shooting. Like when I shoot handguns and USPSA, I like to shoot carry optics, and I do it from my everyday carry holster from appendix. So
Mm-hmm.
this kind of shooting caters to what I want to do normally. When I go and practice, this is what I do. I go set out a target and I want to use natural terrain and I want to be able to find and engage that target in a fairly timely manner. I don't want to get down and walk rounds in. I want to get down, build a solid position, range it, and get a good first round impact where I want it on the target. I don't want to, hit a E type or a D zone and just get an edge hit and be like, yeah, that's marksmanship. I want to be able to be like, no, I'm going to plant this like 2 inches below the carrier bolt at 600 yards. And so I want to be able to make that super refined wind call, but efficiently. And
Mhm.
these hunter matches really cater to that. But what else?
How many
We
shooters
did,
were
I want to say like 100 and almost 200. I'd have to look again, but this is one of the more popular matches. It's a really cool venue.
there? Mhm.
It's kind of central. It's easy for a lot of people to get to. It's not terribly out of the way. It's still a
Right.
bit of a drive, but no, there's a lot of shooters at this one. Verl Dallin is the MD. He ran it super efficient. We shot 12 stages the first day, 7 stages the second day, and we were done at the banquet at 12:30
Well, that's
on
nice.
Sunday. So it was super efficient because we've been to the Oregon match was it was a great match. The venue was awesome, but the hike from like where they did the safety briefing to the firing line was like a mile,
Ooh,
and it was in the mud in Oregon, rainy, snowy, and then they had a lot of targets go down. It wasn't a bad match. Like I'm not bagging on you know
right,
the
right,
average or anything. It was awesome, but I think it was just the venue is awesome, but there's a trade off.
right,
That kind of
right.
terrain requires some effort, and I
Mm,
just think some people weren't expecting that, and so it took a lot longer than expected. But
yeah.
yeah, this, down in North Springs, that's an amazing facility, and you get access to some crazy looks very quickly. You don't have
Mhm.
to hike your ass off to get to those positions, which is really cool.
Yeah, that
But
makes it nice. It's a hell of if no one knows what North Springs is, it's a big range here in central Utah by Price, and the county of Price put it in multi-million dollar crazy, like out
mm-hmm,
in the middle of nowhere, which is what's so crazy about it. But it's definitely something cool. Like if you're local, like in anywhere around Utah, you can come. They have a campground there that you can come stay at,
mm-hmm,
and you can just shoot. They got 3D targets. They have USPSA type stuff. They've got long range. It's amazing. It's an amazing venue. So if you want to, go on a little tour, and it's in a beautiful part of the state, so you can't go
mm-hmm.
wrong. I didn't mean to
Yeah,
say it,
it's a good
but just
place.
give a little bit of information about the venue
No,
itself.
yeah, I'd definitely recommend visiting when you're in the area, especially if
Mm,
you're a precision shooter. They
yeah.
dedicate a lot of land to just long range.
And you shot with who'd you shoot with?
Ryan Jacobson, so
Ryan. Okay.
Justin Jacobson's boy.
Yep. You two seem to be doing a lot of the. Are you doing team or are you just doing
Yeah,
your?
yeah, we've shot. That was our fourth team match together. We've only shot teams. I really like the aspect of the communication, talking
Uh-huh.
each other onto targets is super cool. And then the ever since I went to Hat Creek for the first time, like 5 or 6 years ago, I've been obsessed with wind and just understanding it, wind indicators, everything. So I I get the most enjoyment from those matches, obviously from shooting, but giving wind calls to Ryan and seeing
Mm-hmm.
those corrections made and make first round impacts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really paid off in this match because the wind it wasn't like gusting and crazy wind, but it was switchy. And
Mm-hmm.
Verl changed it up. If you're familiar with like kind of the cowboy town at the range, so I'll kind of try and describe it for everyone that's not been there. There's a little
Mm-hmm.
kind of western mini town where they do cowboy action, but there's kind of a ridge, a little knoll that kind of goes up and curves around,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes out and it has all these different draws and it goes up into the buttes. But last year, you shot the match, you'd go up the west side and come around and shoot, and it was just stage, 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 stage. So you shoot like 8 stages with a good full value left to right, and you'd get to the top, and it'd be like a quarter value left to right, and then a quarter value right to left, and you'd come down, and you'd have a full value right to left. And this time, Verl changed it up to where instead of just following the side and coming down, you zigzagged. So every stage, it was like left to right, right to left, left to right, right to left. So you had to be really aware and not get into a groove of, just, my spin's going to eat some of this wind, or spin's going to carry with this wind. So you had to be
Mm-hmm.
a lot more aware of mirage. And then in the morning up there is especially hard because it hides targets, but it takes away mirage, and mirage is a massive wind indicator for
Mm,
me anyway. I've gotten really good at reading and understanding mirage. So when it's
mhm.
cooler, you're not getting any mirage, but there was little floaties and stuff, but it was pretty dead, so we didn't have that big of an issue in the morning. But I did like how he switched it up, so you couldn't just kind of get into a groove. For a whole day, you'd shoot those 8 to 10 stages and have like a pretty leisurely, 3 to 8 mile an hour left to right full value, and you kind of understand what you're doing the whole time. So getting it
Right.
switched up really, really kept everyone on their toes.
But you never had to come off target, really?
Now there was a few when it got a little gusty. Um, there was one target, well, one wind that took our lunch money. I was hitting with like a point 0.6 left the whole time, and then we got Ryan on, and he
Mm,
sent his first shot, and I watched Trace for like just barely caught Trace, and it was like a mill and a half left, so like
mm,
almost past where he was holding. I was like, okay, it just completely in the time we took to switch positions. I got glass and he got on his rifle. It completely switched, and I was a little in the zone. I didn't check mirage. I got into that habit of just I hit with this exact wind hold for the whole time. I was center on every target. Got on Ryan. I was like, just run it. We're low on time. And he just sent one into the dirt. I was like, oh shit. So I was like, okay, give me point 0.4 right, and centered it. So that one caught us off guard, and that kind of put me on, not on edge, but heightened my awareness to the switchy winds.
It's funny because it's the little teeny things that always kill us in matches, as you're mag
Mm-hmm.
seated, and that's when they always say we always make fun of shooter ready. It's like, I think so. Like,
You just start second guessing everything you just did.
like maybe I think which one was the first one again? Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny how we, when you see these guys like only drop 2 points or 4 points or whatever it is in a match. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
holy shit, man, you got your stuff together to
Desert child.
to do stuff like that. That's crazy. Matt, I think, did it in one of the matches he recently shot. I think it was one in Texas. I think he only missed 3 rounds the entire match. And I
Yeah,
was like,
the
holy crap,
Oregon match, he dropped two the entire match.
that is nuts.
It's insane.
Yeah, but you got to be dialed. You got to be, on point. Like, hey, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to this next stage. Is my scope zeroed? Is my mag full? All the little pre-checks that we do. And I had Morgan on here, and he's like he made it his habit to go through a pre-checklist of every
Mm-hmm.
stage. Like, not necessarily BS with everybody, but I'm that person that I just want to go have fun and shoot. So it's been
Yeah.
easy for me to just go shoot and have fun. And if I pace
Mm-hmm.
whatever place, I'm having a good time. And I seem to shoot better when I just don't care. But
Yeah.
um, what guns are you and Ryan shooting the same exact caliber?
Yeah. So we're running not a straight jacket, but it's a Blue Mountain Precision. It's an impact that's right here.
Uh-huh.
It's a impact action in a. I've got an LRH. He had another Manners. I can't remember the exact name, and then I think it's a preferred barrel, 3B contour. And then we're both running a Chad brakes and the Element Theos.
Oh, so
It
you're
ran
not
factory.
running carbon barrels then?
No,
Mm.
yeah. Since in teams you don't have to be super light, it's considered an open heavy gun. So your weight threshold is 16 pounds instead of 12. But with
No.
this setup, it's like 13.8 pounds with a double pulse sky pod.
Mm.
So we made weight no problem. But yeah, they shot great. We're shooting factory ammo. We're shooting a Federal 140 grain center strike 6.5 Creedmoor, and it's been actually kind of crazy how well it's shot. It's gotten out of a couple different lots that we've practiced with. They've been high single digit SDs, which is kind of crazy for mass produced factory ammo. But these rifles love it. They shoot basically one hole. So
Have you tried the Hornady stuff, or are you just running the
yeah,
Federal
we
most?
we did shoot a lot of Hornady, and it's gotten bad.
Oh,
We've
really?
had some issues lately with factory ammo. It started last year when we were up at Hat Creek. Ryan was shooting a 6 Creed, and it was factory ammo, and he had I think like 22 108 ELDMs blow up. at like 50 yards. Like they'd come out of the barrel and just poof.
You hear him
And that
pop.
was, yeah, that was factory on a new rifle. So he knew like the barrel wasn't super, carboned up, wasn't messing with the jacket. It was shooting great. Like it would shoot him one hole, but then you just get one weird one and it would just pop like 50 yards out of the barrel. We got it on video multiple times.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, like we shot Hornady 147s, 143s, 140s, ELDXs and ELDMs, and the SDs were horrible. Like we were getting 35 and 40 SDs, and like we had a couple that was like 100 extreme spread,
Judas,
which
that ain't
they
good.
shot great groups, but you know,
That doesn't shoot
velocity.
good groups at long range, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. They'll shoot great on paper at 100 yards, but once you stretch it out, you're gonna, you could have 3 to 5 mils elevation variance.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no,
Try to fix.
this federal stuff has been fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the federal gold medal match stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, it's always been solid. There's a reason why a lot of law enforcement agencies and stuff use all that because
Hmm.
it's been great ammo. And the thing is Barnes has always built phenomenal ammo too. It's just
Yeah,
that it's never been in their forte to build match stuff, and they
yeah,
should. The bullets are great and their loads are great, but they just haven't ever done it. It's stupid.
yeah.
I don't know. How do you like that Chad break?
I'm a big fan. Like, there's been, with priests and them, they've been kind of beefing, but
Mm,
the muzzle break, the break works. I'm sure the priest stinger works well too. But yeah, I got a used one, and then I had an issue with it. It was a little bit off, wasn't quite concentric,
mm,
so it was just barely clipping at the end. They fixed it really fast, and he sent me this non-tuner one while it was being fixed. So I gave the tuner one to Ryan so we could both run a Chad, and they shoot great. Like there's a 13-pound rifle, and I can watch trace on basically every position. I had a couple positions during the match where I was just on the bag. I was trying to be fast, so I didn't go rear tripod. I still caught trace and on like a 600-yard shot.
mm.
So
Yeah,
the muzzle brake works. Yeah,
I still wonder what over like 3 or 4 ports what it really does because I mean
yeah,
most of your gases are gone in the first two or three.
yeah. Hmm.
So I've always wondered, what a 5 port break, what does it really do? So I'd like to see somebody do a good test on that. And yeah, I see where that was always the thing that kind of made me scratch your head where they weld them all. I could see where if it's not perfect, where the
Hmm.
concentricity of it can go bad.
Yeah.
So that
There
always
was
works.
only one. It was only that one batch where they had some that weren't concentric. After
Mm,
that, there's been no issues, at least from what I've heard.
mm.
But yeah, I don't agree with all the beef. I hate the drama,
Yeah,
but the muzzle brake works.
yeah, and
So
I don't know.
that's all
I
I'm
don't know.
in for.
I don't know anything about it. As long as the product works and the people are good behind it, hey, support
Yeah.
them. You can do. That's all. That's the way I look at it. But yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know what's going on there. I keep seeing stuff, and I try to avoid it, and then it keeps just because I don't want to see it. It keeps popping up. I'm like, well, whatever.
Yep. Yeah.
Freaking
But
stupid. Yeah, I didn't know you were shooting a 3B. There's been a lot of that. That is the big question right now, the to be or not to be question. Do I
hmm.
shoot carbon or do I not shoot carbon? And that one's kind of a tough one because there's been a lot of people that have had issues with carbon, but there's also a lot
Yeah.
of people that understand that super light pencil barrels are gonna have stringy. If you're not perfect on chambering and everything else, they're gonna be weird.
Yeah.
So
I think
that's
you
interesting.
you got to be aware of warming them up too. There's
Hmm.
a lot of people they'll get down and they'll want to shoot a 5 shot group, but your barrel, especially a smaller or a light contour or a carbon, can warm up in those 5 shots to
Hmm.
where you'll start to see a small dispersion on those, fourth and fifth shots that'll open the group up.
Right.
So especially with these, like these didn't warm up as bad, but my Seekins, great rifle, the PH3. It's a lot
Hmm.
lighter contour with spiral fluting, and I did notice that when if I wanted to shoot a crazy tight group, which it's definitely capable of, I would shoot and give it 2 minutes between each shot, and it would shoot a fantastic group. But if I shot, like I would with my AI, where I can just get down and go boom, break it clean, cycle another one, and as soon as I'm settled, break it clean, like it'll stack them. but that's because it's got a truck axle for a barrel. The Seekins could not do that. It would shoot like an 1.25 inch group.
If you did that.
But
Yeah, I mean,
that's,
they are built for different,
yeah.
different things for sure. And if hunting, if you're still shooting after 5 rounds, you might want to go think of something else to do with your life. Um, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
depending on what you're going to do, but in 3 rounds, you should have something dead.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. And a lot of people are like, well, I try to shoot everything. I've got 5 or 10 rounds. I'm like, that's great, but you can't. Like, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But it still boggles my mind when people sight in and try, we've talked about this before, like try to run the bolt as fast as they can to sight in. And I'm like, why? Take your
Yeah.
time. This is one of those times that you really want to see what your rifle's capable of. And
Mm-hmm.
just going out there and just running the bolt and running the thing. Now I get that if you're just going to set up on a 300-yard target and you're going to go or whatever. But when you're zeroing, take the time and make those shots. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a few guys that have, their little ritual. They shoot and then they wait 3 minutes and then they shoot and they wait 3 minutes but to a point that really doesn't give you any real world knowledge either. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're not running the bolt like you stole it, but you're also not waiting all day to try and shoot a group because you want to see what that rifle is capable of in a
Yeah.
situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've talked about sitting down and doing that, and we probably need to do some more podcasts about sighting in and what am I looking for and setting up
Mm-hmm.
my rifle so I can sight in, loading
Yeah.
bipod, rear bags, what supports do I want? Do I want a lead sled? Do I not want a lead sled? All
Mm-hmm.
the different questions like that. So we'll have to put that one on the list to talk about here pretty soon.
No, that would be a really good one because I've got quite an array of different genres of rifles, and each one zeros differently, and I kind of have a different process for each one. If it's like a heavy tactical like my AIs, then they're kind of immune to how you drive them. Like they just shoot. Like I can put my wife behind them and she'll shoot a one hole group.
Hmm.
But once you get behind a light hunter rifle, if you don't know how to drive that, if you don't know how to hold it, if you don't know how to follow through with it, you're not going to shoot a good group. And at the same, especially with gas guns, there's some very particular ways that you need to drive a gasser if you want it to shoot accurate. It could be a tack driver, but if you don't know how to drive a gasser, it'll be a 2 minute gun. But
Yeah.
there's a few things that you can do when you get behind a gasser that you can turn it into a 1 minute gun.
Yeah, Matt, we built him a barrel. We've been doing a bunch of AR-10 barrels, just testing, playing around. And we built him a barrel. And he goes, dude, it's like a minute and a half barrel. I don't know what's going on. Something's wrong. He goes, but I'm going to try something. So he put a different bolt in it, and it went to like a half-minute gun
Mm-hmm.
just by changing out the bolt. And I'm like, that's the problem with those is there's so many moving parts. You can't
Yeah, there's
be
a lot more variables.
you can't add yourself in there. That's a problem. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that's bad. But yeah, that you brought up a good point. We get that all the time. We've had a bunch of people build the light. I want the lightest rifle you can build. Okay, well, how far do you walk down? Well, I don't. I just sit in my side by side. All right, what does it matter how light it is then? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to want to shoot it. We built 300 PRCs for people. I'm like, man, I don't enjoy shooting this rifle at all. And I'm like, well, you got to get good with it. You got to practice. Yeah, I'll shoot like 3 or 4 rounds and I'll call it good. Well, that's not very fair to the animal either when you do
Nope.
that. You've got to understand that thing is going to kick. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, especially when you try to build it that light and you don't need to build it that light.
Yeah.
I and Scott Satterley had that conversation on one of the very first podcasts we ever did was what is the best weight for a hunting rifle? And
Mm-hmm.
I think me and him were really close. We were in that 8 to 9.5 pound mark, and it also depends on what cartridge you're running too, what
Mm-hmm.
caliber, what cartridge, kicking the ever living snot out of you, and whether you're running a chassis versus a stock because they recoil a little bit different. But there's so many variables that come into that, and then people are like, "Man, I can't get this thing to shoot under a minute." Well, do you flinch like you're being slapped every time you shoot it, or what?
Mm-hmm.
Do you shoot with your eyes open? I tell people that all the time. I'm like, do you shoot your eyes open? But no, that's a real question. I really am asking. Are you
Yeah.
shooting your eyes open? Or you slapping the shit out of that trigger like it owes you something?
Mm-hmm.
Good one. I don't know. So, well, that's good. NRL Hunter was good. What's the next one you're going to shoot? You going to do more?
Um, we were trying to get invited to finale, but we were we placed fifth in the 2 matches, and then we got second in this one. So I don't think we quite got an invite.
Mm.
So we're probably done with NRL hunters for this year. Next year we're going to hit it really hard because we want to. We feel like we got super dialed, kind of found our groove in this match because I dropped 8 shots the whole match. We had, I think, the biggest thing that helped us through to stay super consistent through the match was we were giving each other on plate corrections. So even when we hit, we were giving each other corrections for the next target. So if I centered a target, we would say, center, you're good, maintain that hold. But if I was 2 or 3 tenths left or right, or making an edge hit, or even like a tenth or 2 tenths low on that plate, if we could catch that, a lot of it was basing it off of the way the plate rocked. But
Hmm.
we were able to catch trace on a lot of those shots and see a very specific impact. We would give that correction and then make that correction on the next target in that course of fire, and it helped us stay. It just gives you a lot bigger margin for error. So if I'm on a left edge hit and then I move and I give him that correction, it brings him back to center. So if there is a change in the wind, you have that much bigger buffer. So if that wind changes and pushes me another 3 tenths, I'm still on the plate. Whereas if I hadn't made that correction off of an edge hit, you'd be 3 tenths off. And I
Right.
think that helped us a lot in this match.
Yeah, and
But
I
yeah, we've just been refining everything.
you've got to as a team, you've got to be able to make those call outs and be set up
Mm-hmm.
correctly, not flinching and looking through it. And I've heard a lot of people say like they love the team aspect of the NRL hunter type stuff
Mm-hmm.
because of that reason. But you've
Yeah.
got to have somebody that's putting in as much time as you are to be as
Mm-hmm.
proficient as you are, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think me and Ryan have shot together enough now that we've gotten super efficient in our communication. Talking each other onto targets is also another big one. I think a lot of people struggle with that just because they're not really, I think a big thing with communication and finding, if I'm on the target and I want to get them on the target, the biggest thing is establishing a common point of reference. So if there's a very distinct ridge, you're not just like, oh, it's left, it's next to a big white rock, or a juniper. That's not gonna, everything's next to that out there in price. So you need to say, like, there's this very distinct ridge, or if you found the first target of the first placard, that's your point of reference. And we have reticles in our binos and in our scope, so I can say, he's 10 mils left and 3 mils low of that placard, and that gives you a very accurate reference point and gets you almost exactly on target. And without that, you just need to start in the same place, get yourself in looking at the same thing, and then say, okay, follow the ridge or the road, or it's 3 distinct junipers riding the ridge to the right, and 6 o'clock at that. And going out and just hunting and shooting shit with Ryan is that also helps too. And I know a lot of people can't get that much time in with their teammate, but
Yeah.
just establishing a common point of reference is huge in talking your teammate onto a target.
Yeah, we sponsor quite a few guys that shoot mammoth, and they shoot the real world sniper, and they do all this. And man, they train a lot to be able to have a good correspondence with each other
Mm-hmm.
on finding engaging targets, understanding when to send around, hold, wait, like that's kind of crazy when it comes down to the it's hard for yourself to do it, but then when you're trying to explain it to somebody, it
Mm-hmm.
it adds a whole nother variable onto that. But I think it's kind of what is intriguing to everybody because you're doing it with somebody and you're having fun with
Yeah.
that person type thing, and
Mm-hmm.
you're enjoying each other. But I think that is a big thing, like, and that's kind of why I brought that up if you're shooting the same caliber, because we've been asked that a lot. Like, well, I'm shooting this caliber, but my buddy's shooting this caliber. Well, you're gonna have some issues because your hold's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
different than his hold, and your velocity is going to be. So a lot of these people like to build the exact same thing. So they have the
Mm-hmm.
same gunsmith spin up their barrels. They have the same setups. That way, the same chamber reamers ran in both. The same lot of barrels is used in both. That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of go down a rabbit hole there. But I think as long as your velocities are pretty dang close to each other and everything's good, you should be pretty dang proficient. I think, right?
Yeah. Our rifles are basically identical except for the stocks. Same action, same barrel. We're shooting the exact same ammo within 5 FPS of each other. So our data was basically the same. Wind calls were exactly the same. So that's just another variable that we don't have to worry about. I can get on if I'm hitting with this wind hold. I can get on, check conditions, make sure they're the same as when I shot. Give him that same wind hold, and he'll hit the exact same spot.
That'll also
And that
probably
was
help you if there is an issue. Like, hey, something's
yeah.
wrong. We got
We
some issues
did
set up.
that did help because he had his binos kind of glitched for a second when we were on one target, and it just wasn't lasing, wasn't turning on. So I just handed him my binos, and he got on, and he could pull his ballistics from my binos because they're within like half a tenth of each other.
Hmm.
So that did help us on that did save us on one stage.
Yeah, that's
Turned
nice.
out his
Well,
battery just died, but
yeah, that's freaking, dude. That's what I hate. I hate batteries. I freaking
hmm
absolutely hate them, especially when it comes to hunting. Because
yeah.
you get on a hunt or something and your battery goes to shit. That's why I always bring
hmm
extras. I
Yeah,
was
we had
always
extras, but you can't swap batteries on a stage.
right. You don't
You
have time.
can, but I mean, you're
Yeah.
going to waste a lot of time. That's why I went back to a bubble level. In price or not price, Vernal. I was running an electric level, not ascendant level, SG Pulse, and I had a few issues with it. Not like manufacturer issues, but it's just there's so many settings that you can get into if you hold the button for too long, and it just pissed me off. I'm not dealing with that anymore. I didn't
Mm,
like having to turn it on every stage. I was trying to save battery, but I was also trying to be aware. And there's one stage when I didn't turn it on. I got on my rifle. I was like, oh shit, have to hold the button down, turn it on. So I just went
mm.
back to a bubble level, and it was splendid. I loved running a bubble level at this last match. I didn't have to worry about it. It was dead nuts. I didn't miss because my rifle was canned or my level had turned off. So that was nice.
Yeah. And I remember when SIG came out with that BDX system where you had your phone and your binos and your scope and everything, you're the rangefinder and everything had to
Mm-hmm.
sync together. And I'm like, it's a cool idea, but hell no, not just no,
Yeah,
but hell no. Like
everything's cool on paper.
you're adding too many variables into it. Give me basics. Let me go out. Give me a rangefinder. Let me go out and I'll figure it out. Because we're not. Yeah, I guess if you're really good at ranging with mills and understanding how tall your target is and everything. But most people don't do
Mm-hmm.
that. They just
Yeah.
range. But even Jose on Long Range Tactics did a thing about where it even ranges, like in the SIG rangefinder and stuff, like where you've got to hold it to get the accurate
Yeah.
range. And
You
that's
need to
come
go
along
out and mess with your beam divergence and the reticle.
too. Because you've got to know where to hold that thing exactly to get where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
What binos you guys running? SIGs?
The Vectronics Vector X's,
Oh, okay. Those are good. That's a nice setup.
they
What
they've been
what's
phenomenal.
what systems in those? Is that the AB?
Yeah, AB Elite.
No, okay. Yeah, I've heard that. The Leicas I've heard good things about. I know Swaro came up with their own. I don't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah, the great glass, but I don't like the EL ranges. They can range far, and the same with the Leicas. The Leicas have AB, but they are so slow to get you data.
No, really.
So yeah, because it's with the Vectronics and the SIG, the new Kilo Gen 2s, the 10Ks, they have a lot more. They're all digital, but it's a bigger HUD in there that gives you a lot more information. With the Leicas, it'll flash your range, and then it's like then your data, and I don't think you can change it with
Mm.
with the SIGs and the Vectronics. They give you everything instantly as soon as it gets a reading. It's range data, your wind bracket, and then you can even change your different tables so you can have your remaining energy, velocity, all that. So it's even time of flight. It's
Does
a little
SIG
busy.
does SIG still have that shitty coating or whatever on the glass
No,
that makes
they fixed that. The Gen 2s are way better than the Gen 1s. The Gen 1s were great. They had a great laser, and they
mm-hmm.
did give you good information, but the blue tint was like
It was rough.
it would give you a headache.
Yeah, it was rough.
But
Well, that's
no, the
good.
the Vectronics, I've taken them on 3 hunts and like 5 matches, and they've been flawless. So
What are
I'm
those
a big
run?
fan.
What's the MSRP on them?
I think because I've got the 12 SMRs. I think out the door you're like 3,100.
Mm.
I think that's at least what we like because we have them in stock at UA, and I'm pretty sure they're like 2,900 to 3,100. I'd have to double check, but they're cheaper than the Leicas. The glass is fantastic.
I've heard a lot of good things about them. When everything comes out, you're like, yeah, should I
Mm-hmm.
maybe wait to for Gen 2? But it sounds from everything that I've heard, everybody's saying, but that is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But I'm to that point, like, okay, I went and bought a range. I've got like 2 or 3 range finders. I've got a couple pieces of glass. I'm like, if I were just to get rid of all that and get one that's together, what would I really spend between
Mm-hmm.
everything that I've spent on all this? So you got to look at what you're doing there.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of UA, one of our great sponsors, you guys have got RMAC coming up. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to try and release this podcast in the next couple days. So, what is RMAC for everybody that's listening?
So it's the Rocky Mountain Air Gun Challenge. It's the biggest air gun competition in the U.S. and probably the world. Massive cash prizes. We give away $120,000 in prizes for the winners, but it consists of a couple different events. Bench rest is a big one of the main ones. It's a 100-yard bench rest, and you can use basically whatever caliber you want up to a 35 cal, and you just shoot 25 bullseyes at 100 yards in 30 minutes. And then there's big bore. So there's an energy requirement. I think it's 100 foot-pounds, 150 foot-pounds, but it's a big bore air gun. You shoot long range for air rifles. The tiebreaker I think is at like 600 yards, but it's kind of like an NRL hunter, but without the positional and without finding the targets. They have a bunch of different ones. This year it's 80s themed, so we've got like ET targets, Star Wars targets,
Yeah,
other
it's
stuff
awesome.
like that. But then we have precision, which is basically PRS. So there'll be PRS style barricades and PRS style targets all within 200 yards. Because I think with my competition setup, a 200-yard shot is the equivalent data wise, like mil wise, it's the equivalent of a 1,000-yard shot with my 6 Creed. So I'm holding like 8 mils for 200 yards. So
Mhm.
and then you can have like the same appropriate size target in mills, but that's super cool. They have a lot of cool barricades for that. And then they have speed, which is, it's what it's in the name. It's just a bunch
Mhm.
of targets shooting as fast as you can run your air gun. And that gets super competitive. It's pretty cool. But it's goes over 4 days. It's up in Hobble Creek, the Hobble Creek Garth Kilpack shooting range. It's gotten massive. It's crazy. I think sign up usually sells out in like 15 minutes, and people come from all over the world. We have a bunch of shooters coming from like UAE, Australia, England. It's honestly insane how big this competition is, and it's the biggest cash prizes of like any shooting competition in the US. Like winner of PRS or precision and bench rest, first place gets $20,000. Second place gets $10,000. Third place gets 5,000, and then down from there, all the way out down to 10th place. I think takes like 500 or 2,000 or $100 and up. So like even like sixth place, you're getting like $1,000. So
That's
it's pretty
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. And
But
that is one of the hard things about competing in anything is it costs so much money to do it. But when you got something that
mm-hmm.
pays out, but then you're really bringing in people that can shoot when you're putting out
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of money, right?
yeah. There's a lot of team MDT guys. They started shooting it last year. Like Francis, yeah, Francis Cologne. He got
Uh-huh.
second place last year. He's an MDT guy. They had a couple other MDT shooters out there, but those guys are good and they're serious. We got them their air guns and they freaking shot them and they showed up. So it's a serious competition. I think people are they overlook air guns a lot as a training aid and also as a competitive discipline.
Oh, it's still one of my favorite rifles, guns to shoot with, shooting and like birds and everything else. Like it is just fun
Mm-hmm.
and it's cheap. What? Let me rephrase that. It's cheap once you buy it. Once you buy it,
Yeah,
they're expensive as hell. I mean, the upfront cost is a little bit more, but once you have it, it's nothing. Like it's
yeah.
awesome.
To feed them, it's you can get five 500 match rounds for $20,
Yeah. And then the
and
air
then
tank, you just keep
charge is
refilling
there.
the air
Yeah.
tank. Yeah. I mean, you can't beat that with a freaking stick. You know what I mean?
No, it's awesome.
No. Well, I'm gonna finish out. It's kind of late. We've been going. Hopefully, we can get some more of these done with summer.
Yeah.
I think everybody understands that life's the son of a gun, and we're trying to get them done. Hold up displays. They sent me an entire wall, and I think they sent Matt one. I don't know if you're gonna get one or not.
I have some hold ups display stuff, but I think I'm gonna wait till my next house to set one up.
Yeah, it's hard because I think I'm gonna do it in this, but I've got to change this room around a little bit. I've got to kind of
Mhm.
rotate but they sent me like an entire wall, so it's 7 feet by 7 feet, I think.
No
And
way.
I've got I'm gonna hang up my helmets and my body armor, and then a couple of my long guns, and like these back here are full autos, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
hang up some of my stuff and kind of have a sweet little area for it. But check out Hold Up Displays.
Hmm.
Uh, Appreciate them supporting us, and until next time. And if again, I always tell everybody this: if there's something you want us to hit, or if there's a question, PM us, DM us, whether it's on um, you know Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Long Range Tactics Podcast. We do answer. People get surprised all the time when we do answer stuff, and I know Sawyer, you do on your channel as well.
Hmm.
So if you have questions, reach out. We're happy to help. That's why we do this. And if there's something you want us to hit, great. I know there's been a few people who are like, man, I got questions about optics. So I think in one of these episodes, I want to bring some new shooters in and let them ask all their questions about optics. We can
Hmm.
kind of teach them that. So there's a lot of cool stuff we're going to do. We just got to find time to do it. So, you know how.
Hmm.
But I appreciate you, Sawyer. And
Yeah.
let's do this again soon.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks,
Always a
buddy.
good time.